Hey guys, it's Ryan from the Nostalgia Factor here, back again with another game review for you guys for today. Today's review is going to be on Castlevania Portrait of Ruin on the Nintendo DS. First Nintendo DS game we've covered in a while here on the channel, so this one should be interesting. Castlevania Portrait of Ruin was published and developed by Konami back in 2006 as the second Metroidvania Castlevania game released on the Nintendo DS, behind Dawn of Sorrow and right before Order of Ecclesia. This game falls into a weird genre in the Castlevania series, not just because it's one of the Metroidvania games in comparison to the original games back on the original NES, but because of the character system that this game has, the unique designs and gameplay that it tries to incorporate, and changing up the Castlevania formula enough, instead of just traversing through Dracula's castle, they try to have their own spin on it. The story of this game follows Jonathan Morris and Charlotte Alune, two childhood friends, with Jonathan being the bearer of the Vampire Killer, a whip that has been used to kill Dracula for centuries. Dracula's castle once again resurrects due to the sorrow and despair people feel from World War II, and thus the two friends journey through the castle in order to put a stop to Dracula and a new vampire that has risen, Bronner, along with two vampire daughters of his that are trying to siphon Dracula's power and try to take over the world for themselves, and along with Death trying to stop Bronner, the new vampire lord, in order to resurrect his own lord Dracula. So the story in this game is a bit different than normal. Instead of just having an individual person going to take down Dracula in a standard storyline, you instead in this storyline have two childhood friends coming together to battle someone other than Dracula near the end of the game anyway. You do fight Dracula at the end as normal, but this is a really good take on the story. I don't really have any issues with it personally. I think it's well thought out, uses characters and lore from the original series, even hinting at future events in games like Aria of Sorrow to boot. So for that matter, I don't really have any problems with the story personally, and again, along with the characterization and whatnot, it fits for a Castlevania game. The visuals in this game from the Nintendo DS look really well, with Jonathan and Charlotte's animations looking great. Even their animations while they're fighting, while they're using their combos, while they're traversing through the castle and doing basic platforming looks really fluid on the system, especially with the individual animated sprites that, Konami at this point used a lot of really good detail for. And of course, the monster animations, the background details, the environments you go through with rain, fire, etc., elemental effects going through with spells. There's just a lot of small and great detail through the various environments that you go through in this game that make it really pop on the DS. In addition to that, the environments that you go through are really unique in this game as well. You're traversing through multiple different paintings in this game as opposed to just through Dracula's castle. A design decision that we'll get into here in a second for that portion of the review. But graphical-wise, it looks really great in these portraits you traverse through in order to defeat bosses to get yourself closer to taking down Bronner and stopping Dracula's resurrection, inevitably, of course. There's different themes you go through. There's a desert portrait, a skull portrait, there is a circus portrait, and there is also a town portrait that you go through. And these are all really well detailed. I really love all the paintings and the ideas for them that Konami actually wanted to put differently into this game. But overall, graphically, especially for the Nintendo DS, Portrait of Ruin hits all the right nails. Also, a side thing to mention alongside the story and the beautiful looking graphics for this game, the music, like with all Castlevania games up to this point, is absolutely legendary. This song has some of the best tracks, I think, in the entire series. Not really the most eye-catching music, so to speak. Like, some of the tracks are more atmospheric than anything, but they have some wonderful pieces in here, and including the intro theme, which you guys will listen to right now. Now, while it's no secret for a lot of Metroidvania Castlevania games that they have the traditional setup of equipping weapons, equipping items, raising your stats, using different healing items and whatnot, it's standard RPG kind of mechanics. And there are all these hidden secrets and breakable walls that you can use to discover new weapons, new armor, new spells and whatnot. It's the standard Castlevania Metroidvania stuff that you get to equip different spells and whatnot in order to fit your playstyle the best. But besides the traditional RPG tropes that Castlevania Portrait of Ruin brings to the table, it's a team mechanic that you actually have in this game. So instead of just playing as just Jonathan, the new inheritor of the vampire killer, you actually get to play as both Charlotte and Jonathan at the same time. You can have them together to do simultaneous attacks against enemies. You can play as one or the other. Each of them have their own customizable menu that you can equip certain items that are specific to them. Like Charlotte, she gets tomes and ancient books she could use as an attack and different magical spells. Jonathan gets swords, he gets spears, he gets whips, he has all sorts of weapons that you can find across the castle for him. So there are item-specific things that you find that can only be used for them, but they each have their different loadouts that you can equip. However, a problem that I do have with this mechanic, not just the uniqueness of it, because it is a really good premise that does work. Two main problems that I have with the tag team mechanic are, one, you're generally just going to be using Jonathan through this game. Charlotte has really good spells, and that makes sense since she's primarily a magic user. However, she's more good for backup. There's a feature that you get in the game where you can play as Jonathan and you bring Charlotte out temporarily to just cast spells on enemies like fire or blizzard or healing yourself and whatnot. You're mainly going to be using Charlotte as a support character. You're not going to have her out the entire time or play as her. So really, it should have been... I feel like the character should have been more balanced, because Jonathan by far is the one most people are going to be going with. Unless you specialize in that kind of thing in RPGs, where you love magic users, you're not going to get much use out of Charlotte just playing as her. And another problem that I have with it, besides the balancing of the two characters' stats and just basic mechanics in general, are the different puzzles and whatnot that you have to do in this game. There's one puzzle in particular where you have to have Charlotte and Jonathan both stand on different motorbikes that go through corridors of the castle in order to unlock another door that you need to use to progress. The problem is, though, switching between this game with the Nintendo DS style, not even just the style, it's just using the X button in general. It might sound like a simple mechanic pressing to switch between them, but the timing is so fickle in a lot of these puzzles, and they're so tedious that if one character gets knocked off a platform or gets hit by an enemy, they despawn, and if they take enough damage, you can't use them, therefore interrupting any progress you may have made in any of these kind of scenarios. So while it is a really cool gameplay concept for Portrait of Ruin, I don't think it's the best system overall. Now, while this game also not only did it bring the dual partner system into the play, where you can play both Charlotte and Jonathan, there was also the change of the design of Dracula's Castle. Now, basically, Dracula's Castle in this game acts like a hub area. I mentioned the paintings and the beautiful graphics and detail they have with the different enemies and layouts earlier in the video, but the portraits themselves serve as main areas that you go through in order to get to Bronner and take him down, and then, again, prevent Dracula from resurrecting once again. However, because they added the portraits in for a new Castlevania mechanic, including environments that you would never see in a traditional Castlevania game, period, that sacrifices the design of Dracula's Castle in general. It doesn't have much of an identity. There's stuff like the Great Staircase, the aforementioned Clock Tower. There are different, like, sewers that you get to go through in the castle. There's different castle-like environments that you get to go through, but nothing unique like past Castlevania games whatsoever. And you can tell just from looking at the map that the design of it just isn't that great. Platforming is awkward in some points, enemy placements can be a bit annoying in some departments, and they sacrificed the design of the core castle itself that gave the series its name in order to make the portraits a thing. And while it might not be a big deal to some, that is a huge deal for platforming, for gameplay, and for combat, and for just the aesthetic of having it in the game in the first place. And the bad part with the portraits is, while they're cool visually and have unique enemies in them, again, you wouldn't normally see in a Castlevania game, the maps themselves for some of these portraits are abysmal in some areas, where they're just so simple, they're so cluttered, they're confusing to go through, and if you take a look at one of the maps, wow, I don't even know what to say for some of these. They're just, one looks like a giant box, one goes in like a really weird pattern that has you going all over the place before heading to the direct center of the map. The designs for these levels were sacrificed greatly to include the portraits, and while they're cool in a lot of areas, the design of Portrait of Ruin suffers overall for not just Dracula's Castle, but the newly added portraits to the game, which is by far my biggest issue out of this game. Overall, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin on the Nintendo DS is a really good game, all things considered. The story is executed well, the game looks fantastic on the Nintendo DS, the controls are really fluid and solid, the partner system was a really unique mechanic, and even the addition of the portraits helped change up the Castlevania formula enough to make this a unique entry to play in the series. And even on the Nintendo DS, I'd argue. However, with the design suffering, with Dracula's Castle and the portraits themselves not exactly being the best, and the limitations of the partner system not working well with puzzles and other gameplay elements, it is bogged down. It's a cost and go system, I call it, where you add more stuff into it to make it unique, but it comes at a cost of basically everything that made Castlevania, especially with the design of the iconic castle itself. So, overall, Portrait of Ruin, good game, really solid game, in fact. As far as the game in the Castlevania series goes, there are better games to play. Aria of Sorrow, a game that came out in the Game Boy Advance and a game I reviewed a while back, that one works a lot better than this game. So, overall, highly recommended game that I recommend you guys go and check out at the very least, but not the first game I'd recommend you play for the Castlevania series. Play Symphony of the Night, that'll get you hooked. And that's all for today's video, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe to the channel to catch more reviews, and comment your thoughts on Castlevania Portrait of Ruin down in the comment section down below, either from your own personal experiences, what you see in this video, or from hearing it from someone else. We got a few more reviews coming for you guys soon, including one that I'm playing that isn't shaping up to be that amazing of a game, like I've heard. So, either way, guys, like I said, I will catch you in the next video. Hope you have a good one, and keep on gaming.